I'm your host, Keith Walsh, and this week we're focusing on careers. Whether you're thinking of changing your career, applying for that promotion you really want, or starting your own business, career coach Ronan Kennedy joins us today to delve into some career strategies. Ronan coaches individual clients, as well as running workshops on career development, communication skills, and goal setting. Before we get into the goal setting, Ronan, you're very welcome to our podcast today, and thank you for joining us to talk about today's topic, careers.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, sure, look, thanks for coming. Before we go careering into careers, can you give us a little bit about your background, how you got into this crazy world of advising people on careers?
Yeah, sure. So I went to DCU. I studied international business and Japanese. That's where I kicked off.
Konnichiwa.
That's
all I know.
Right. Well, that's a great start. So yeah, I studied international business and Japanese. Spent a year in Japan, which was great. Then I came back from Japan, went to Australia on a year abroad. Went back to Japan again, this time to work teaching English with the idea that maybe I would get a job over in Japan using my Japanese and my business skills. And then after that, my brother was developing his company, so he offered me a job to come back to Ireland. So I circled back from Japan and started working with him for a couple of years. So I was the operations manager there, which meant I did absolutely everything he wanted me to do.
Okay.
Well, he focused on all the fun stuff. No, but it was a great experience, and when you're put in that position, the only thing you can do is kind of go into hyper growth mode where you just learn as much about everything as quickly as possible. So that's what I did as the operations manager there. It was really just him and myself, and then a year and a half in, we got some people to help us out. From there then, just to give you the brief overview, I decided I wanted to fulfill a long-time dream, which was living in Spain and studying some Spanish.
Nice.
So I had to bid farewell to my brother and his company, and I went over to Spain, lived in Madrid for a year and a half. I'd been on holiday there for a week and just fell in love with it, and then I went back. But also when I was working with my brother's company, so he had a high-performance coaching, like physical coaching, so strength and conditioning, high-performance gym. When I was working with him, he had a lot of books lying around on psychology, emotional intelligence, coaching strategies, all these sort of things. And one of the days, I was flicking around them in the office when I had a little bit of free time. And I was just like, this stuff's kind of interesting. I don't know about all the working out in the gym.
Yeah.
But I definitely like the coaching and the psychology and the emotional intelligence side of it. So I said, well, let's see what else there is in this. And I remember one of the first books I picked up was a book called Emotional Intelligence by a guy called Daniel Goleman. And I was like, wow, this is fantastic. I never knew all of this stuff. And I remember looking at the books he'd referenced at the back and just picking out a few of them and then reading those. And that's kind of how I started to develop my interest in what I liked, by just going through the references and expanding on all the books from there. And so with that in mind, and with the idea of going to Spain, I thought, well, let's go to Spain. Let's study coaching and let's study business and, all that sort of stuff, in more detail. And how am I going to do that while in Spain? Well, I'm going to need a lot of time, like not just time, but mental time, like mental capacity, because it's very hard to focus on a job 8, 9, 10 hours a day where you're like mentally drained, and then go and study something that's super mentally draining as well. So I said, well, let's do something reasonably low impact on the brain, conversational English lessons.
Okay.
For me. So having chats with people. So that's what I did. I had chats with people in English for a couple of hours a day. That was enough for me to pay my bills, and then I saved nothing, but I could then focus on studying my coaching and business stuff on the side. And then after that, after a year and a half in Madrid, having the time of my life, I decided to come back to Ireland and start my business as a career coach and business mentor with all the learnings that I had. So I was pretty much good to go when I came back. Of course, so I had to set up and get clients and stuff like that. So I started that about 7.5 years ago.
Wow. Just from talking to you now, you seem like the type of guy, and I think this is important for a conversation for anybody listening, thinking about careers and jobs and all that kind of stuff. You seem like the type of guy who looks at lifestyle and job like at the same time, almost like, well, what do I want to do? Where do I want to live? I like that culture. How do I live there? How do I manage that? How do I get to, what do I do when I get to Australia? What do I do when I get to Spain? at every turn, at every point, you were thinking about your lifestyle and your job hand in hand, and one was as important as the other.
Yeah, totally. Like one of the things, a big word that my brother and his colleagues would use is holistic when they were working with clients. So they're always talking about this idea of holistic development. But if you think about it, we all want like a holistic lifestyle, right? You want to have fun, you want to build good relationships, you want to have interesting work. You know, we all kind of want everything in a way, don't we? You know, what do you want? I want the best of everything. So yeah, I was always thinking about that, and I guess it really comes back to the question of what is success for you? You know, and that's a question I would have pondered a lot. What does it really mean? I suppose some people would talk about it in terms of money, other people would talk about it in terms of lifestyle, some people talk about it in terms of the type of work that they do. But it's a difficult question, but it's definitely a question worth pondering over, because that's going to dictate a lot of the steps you take going forward. So for me, it was always a question of, well, how can I do work that's interesting for me? I definitely want to have good conversations with people. I definitely want to work hard. I definitely want to be self-employed, but I also want to have, you know, a life that I enjoy as well. Because if it's all consuming, then I feel like I would have won the wrong game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, I never wanted to get to a place where I felt, great, I'm here, and now I don't like it. Because, you know, I would have heard a few people talk about that in books, or, you know, they feel like, oh, you know, I've got all this, and you're kind of going, oh, right, I never thought about it like that. You'd hear quite often. So yeah, what was success for you? That was one of the questions I really started out.
That's a very good place to start, because I worked in radio for 20 years, and I did a certain breakfast show for 5 years, and then when that finished up, it was a job that I put a lot of work into and effort into, and made a lot of sacrifices. So my success was this job going well, and this was like success for me, success for my family, success. You know, it's my career was my success if that went well, and it was going well for a while. But then it was somebody else's decision ultimately to stop that show. So it was their decision to go, well, we're finished with this show now. We're moving on. We're bringing in some new presenters. Thanks very much, and all that kind of stuff, which is, you know, on the face of it, a very good decision. It's the right thing to do. People have to move on. You know, I wasn't. You know, I was probably too old to be working on a youth radio station, all that kind of stuff. It made a lot of sense, but I felt when the rug was pulled from under me, I felt helpless, and I felt like I had the wrong understanding of the word success. So it led me to go, when that happened, I felt very unwanted and unloved, and you know, because I was like, I'm giving you everything here. I've put everything into this.
What else do you want?
And now you've just cancelled it.
Right.
So I ended up going to therapy and figuring myself out, and coming and trying to come up whatever the next thing was from a different angle. So success then became, well, how are my family? Like, am I a successful father? Am I a successful husband? And then, you know, how do I get a job that I enjoy, but also like that gives me a work-life balance? That everything isn't career.
Right.
It's not all about the career. You know, it was kind of nearly the first thing I did. I was like, well, I'm going to figure out how I approach this differently, and figure out why I let what happened to me happen to me. You know. So for anybody listening now, what are the watch outs? Like, what are the things that they might think, oh, I might be doing this wrong, might be approaching this wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. Just before I go, like, I love that, you know, you had such good takeaways from that experience, because so often if someone's listening and they have like a really tough moment, let's say they've been made redundant or something like that, and that's happened a lot through this period. If they've had a really tough moment, it's great to hear that, like, you know, people like you can come out the other side and actually be much better off. Yeah. Because you've learned more about yourself, you've redefined it. Your family has a better lifestyle. You're still in the game and doing really, really well. So it's great to hear that, because I think if someone's in those moments, a lot of self-doubt can like come into the equation. I don't know if you felt that at all. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I felt like, oh, I'm not good enough. Yeah, I felt rejection. Rejection was the big thing. Right. And I suppose the people I worked for, I was like, oh God, if they don't like me, then it's downhill from here. You know? Maybe nobody else will. Nobody else will. Right. So we start creating these beliefs. Yeah, I'd reached the top, and then the only way was down. This was it. I was like, you know, I'm gone. You know, it's over. Right. I'm never going to work again. Right. So all these beliefs creep in, and you know, it's funny because I would meet some. By the way, not just clients, but people in my personal life would sometimes, like, you know, they'd say, oh, you know, can we grab a coffee? And you're like, yeah, sure, I haven't seen you in ages. And then, you know, quickly it becomes. You need to put things, is this a job or a personal? Yeah, do I invoice this? Yeah. But anyway, no, it's always fun. But, you know, you'd have a coffee, and then, you know, obviously my work is about work, so people would then express their own, or talk about their own work, and they'd go through really tough times where they might be in between changing jobs, or there might be conversations about redundancy. So it's like, and they'd be super high achievers, right? Really high flyers. And it's really interesting to see how those seeds of doubt get planted, and then, their footing just feels really rocky at those moments. So a big part of it, I think, is if you are speaking to someone like that, just really listening to them vent their frustrations and their concerns and their fears. I think that's a huge thing, and not to be underestimated at all, because once you listen to them, they just get to express it and get it off their chest. Now they're not carrying it around with them anymore. And I think in those conversations, really what I just focus on doing is saying as little as possible. Just let them speak. And you're not even there solving it. You're not trying to solve it. I think sometimes friends and family, their intentions are so good that they just want to solve. They want to give advice. They want to help. And there's a moment for giving advice, and there's a moment for helping, and there's a moment for just listening. So I think that's a really, really important thing to do. Something I still struggle with, but the challenge is ongoing.
Yeah. Just listening. But that's the thing, isn't it? You don't have to fix the problem. You just have to allow the other person to speak.
You have to allow them to speak, and then when the time is right, you sit down and you start getting ready with some action steps. And that's when the time comes to support them and say, okay, well, how are you going about this? And have you thought of all the options?
So before we get to the action steps, what is the most common problem that people come with?
Absolutely. It's confidence. All night and all day, it's confidence. And it comes in many forms. People can feel like, I'm not certain of my direction. I don't know which way to go. I don't know what my skills are. So there's uncertainty there, and that kind of manifests as confidence as well. Maybe there's issues at work where they're in a toxic environment, or someone's being difficult, or someone's making their life difficult. And then that can, again, plant seeds of self-doubt. So I think building up that confidence is a really important place to start. But also comes with belief. When you're starting to approach this process, you have to believe that something needs to change. And you have to believe that you can change it. Because if you don't believe that, you're probably not even going to start this process. You're just going to accept what's happened, and you're going to dig down and just do the best you can. I firmly believe, from working with all the people I've worked with over the last 7 years, that change can happen and that they can make it happen. And that's not something I say lightly. That's something that, I've worked with people on over long periods of time to say, well, have we tried this? Have we tried this? Can we do it this way? If they don't come to you, can we go to them, right? Have you tried this other channel? Have you looked at it this way? All the different options, and just being relentlessly persistent and completely optimistic. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going around saying, oh, you're redundant, just be positive about it.
Yeah.
I think that's crazy. If you've had a bad time, you're having a bad time. And we need to look at that realistically and say, okay, this is definitely a struggle and you're not feeling good, but we can make this better. Do you know what I mean? So it's getting that balance as well.
Somebody came to me recently and they'd been made redundant, and they didn't know what to, they had lost their mojo, like they couldn't get up anymore, and they thought like once they got the redundancy there was a bit of money there, so they were okay, and they're like, oh, I'm going to start a job, I'm going to train, I'm going to do this, and they found that they just couldn't get up in the morning, never mind do anything else. And I was kind of saying to him, well, look, you were doing a job, and you were getting up in the morning, and you were motivated to do that job, and you were turning up every day, and everything was great, and that was taken away, and that stopped. So then you're like, of course you're not motivated. So why would you be motivated to do something that you were motivated to do and it just stopped, okay, first of all. And then second of all, well, just spend this time with yourself. And you can tell me whether I gave them the right advice. I said, spend the time with yourself. Have a lie-in. Think about yourself. Have romantic walks with yourself. Think about what it is you used to, like, find the joy, find the things that you used to find joy in and do them. And I was kind of like, and once you do that, everything will just kind of become a lot clearer. Like because he was so hell bent on, all he was thinking about, I can't get up in the morning, and I'm not motivated to find a job. Yeah. I'm like, well, maybe you're coming at it from the wrong
No, I like
place.
it. Good. I think good advice, Keith.
Yeah?
I'm with you on that one.
Good.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you've got some time off, enjoy it. Right? You've got some time off, enjoy it. Like, what's the positive of this moment? So if you can go for walks, but the going for walks, I think, is also good advice if it gives you the opportunity to process what's going on, not going for walks, listening to music or listening to something that doesn't give you a chance to actually say, okay, what's happened? What am I going to do? What are my steps forward? How do I need to shape my vision for my future and my career future? How do I create a compelling goal, right? Because people have goals, but if your goal doesn't compel you, you're still not getting out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, because it's like, I have to get a job.
Right.
All right, what kind of job? And what do you like doing? And maybe you didn't like the old job. And maybe,
So yeah, or even if you've got like a month off, you want to spend it well. So, are you excited about getting up to meet a friend for a coffee, or going to the gym, or, taking a nice walk, or going for a hike in the mountains? Whatever you're going to do is going to have to compel you to get up. So I think that's really important that you spend some time making a compelling goal. And there's a bit of struggle in that, by the way, as well.
Yeah,
of
course.
You don't just kind of go, oh, I've got something that totally excites me and engages me straight away. So I suppose the other thing to mention is, if we're talking about people who are taking time off because they've been given an opportunity, you also have to make sure that you're meeting your needs in that. Like if someone's under financial pressure, obviously, that's a slightly different game. I guess it's an obvious point, but still worth mentioning.
Totally, yeah.
And I think, when I'm talking to people, and I would give similar advice, by the way, that if you do have a moment to take a little break and you want a break, and you want, so take the break, but also create a plan for how you're going to get back in the game. That's really important, because now you're organized. When you want to actually get back into it, to approach it like it's a job in a way. So are you going to go to the library or the coffee shop or the hotel to get out of the house and start looking for jobs? Not 8 hours a day. That's crazy. Maybe 2 or 3 hours a day.
Nobody really works 8 hours a day anyway.
Right?
Yeah.
I know. I don't. But, so to
treat it like this is your new job.
Treat
now.
it as a job.
Yeah.
You have a job, and your job is to get a job. So do it maybe 2 or 3 hours a day. And that could involve updating a CV, updating a cover letter, searching for some jobs, and meeting a contact for a coffee. Even if, you don't think it's going to be the game changer. Firstly, it's social, and we're social creatures, so we need to meet people. And secondly, we don't know where the opportunities are going to come from, because, no one is an island. And, maybe, so it's interesting, because sometimes I would give people advice about networking, and the advice is network. But people would say like, oh, why would I talk to, Keith about, do I want to become a DJ, and do I have the skills for it? It's like, well, no, but he knows people,
Yeah.
He's got friends, and he's got family, and they've got friends, and they've got family. So, we're all connected. So even if you're talking to a plumber and you don't want to be a plumber, they still know people. So it's a good way of networking.
You're talking to somebody who needs their bathroom done or whatever. Even that's not my field, but I do know people who have bathrooms. yeah, I get it. Yeah,
exactly.
You're always networking. You're always talking anything. Yeah.
And the funny thing about networking is people don't feel comfortable doing it. They don't feel comfortable doing it. Well, why do you think people don't feel comfortable doing it?
Because they're meeting someone because they're looking for something from them, is it? Or
exactly, precisely.
The begging bowl.
Exactly. So we feel
gives a job.
Gives a job, will it? So we feel that if we go to someone that we're begging, that we're asking for a job. But then if you change the question, and if I said to you, Keith, if someone came to you, and they came to you in a reasonable, polite way, and they were asking your advice, would you be open to giving them advice?
Totally, yeah.
And if you felt that you could direct them or connect them with someone who you thought could be of interest, would you be open to doing that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? Now, that is the resounding answers I hear from people. So when I ask people, would you go for, network with somebody and say, I don't want to do that, I don't want to beg. I said, well, if I know someone who comes to you, they're like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'd love to give them advice. I'd love to help them out. And I suppose if you just think about it, people love the opportunity to give advice. They love the opportunity to help someone out. But there's no requirement to say, look, I guarantee I'm going to get you something. And the other person has no need to say, I guarantee I'm going to take it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just there's no expectations, or you arrive with no expectations, or
there's no obligation.
Yeah, you don't want to leave with the job. You're signing a contract at the end of the meeting. It's just like, well, I need advice. What would you do in my situation?
Right.
You just get to sort of trade thoughts,
share ideas, trade thoughts, have a chat.
Definitely, the worst thing that can happen is like what nothing, which is,
There's
fine.
no downside.
No downside. There's absolutely no downside.
So there's no obligation. There's no obligation from them to give you a job, and there's no obligation from you to take the job, even if you get offered it, which may surprise you. Some people would feel like, well, I don't know if I want to do it.
I don't want to be a plumber, but he's offered me a job now, and I'm out of a job.
What, like, he offered me a job. What do I say? Say, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, but it's just not the right fit for me right now. And thanks for thinking of me.
Yeah.
By the way, I know somebody needs their bathroom done.
So we've mostly spoken about people who find themselves in that situation where they're redundant or they lose a job. What about the person who's in the job and hates the work and wants to find a new career? And this is a sort of a very broad question, and it's a big question. Is there a simple answer?
It's great. It's a great question, because that's where a lot of people start. They start with this broad question, and it's overwhelming because it's so broad, and it's like, I don't even know where to start, right? And so I would say think about two basic things. You can start with a brand new career. Think of it as a brand new profession. Or you can harness your transferable skills and go to something else. So when you think of a profession, you can usually describe it in one word. Doctor, dentist, DJ, vet, policeman, right? One word. And usually when you go into profession, you need to train. You need to do the full course. You basically need to go back to square one in many ways, because you're not harnessing any of the skills, knowledge, experience, abilities that you have. So that's one way. Most people don't really like that idea if they're in a job and let's say they've got a mortgage and they've got kids and they want to keep the show on the road. Harnessing existing skills, in other words, transferable skills, is usually a lot more feasible option, and it's actually going to give them a very similar outcome at the end of the day, right? Now, if you're still between, let's say, changing profession completely and harnessing existing skills, people can be very resolute and say, no, I absolutely want to change profession. Fine. So I would say, fine, that's great. Right? We can organise that. But the question I would ask them is, what will it give you? Right? What do you hope it will give you? So when you change into that new profession, what does it give you back? Does it give you a lifestyle? Does it give you income? Does it give you more time? Does it give you more interesting work? Does it give, what is it going to give you? And so sometimes people would say, well, a better working environment.
Good, nice, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
A better team to work with. Perfect. And they're the kind of answers you typically get back. Now, that's fine, but could we also meet those values or those needs or those priorities by harnessing your transferable skills?
Okay, so without throwing the baby out with the bathwater, could we still get the results that you want just by moving slightly rather than throwing the baby out with the bathwater?
Exactly. Yeah. So we don't need to throw the baby out. We can just say, let's see if we move slightly different and we can meet all of those. So sometimes people would say, no, I absolutely want to do this. But you can say, well, okay, fine, but we could still investigate this first, because if there's a belief that's very strong that says these transferable skills, this idea of moving slightly across or moving, sometimes the belief is really strong that just doesn't exist and that's just not an option.
Okay.
So then I would say, well, can we just investigate it a little bit?
Let's look at this first.
Figure it out. So what I love to hear people to say is, yes, I see I can move to that. I see those are options. There's some possibilities there. I don't want to. Great. Okay.
Yeah.
We've done our due diligence.
Yeah.
And now we can go over here and set you on this career path and make sure that it's going to work as well as possible for you.
Moving from being a teacher to a guard,
for example.
Or whatever it is, which seems to me like a full, a profession change.
That is a full switch.
Yeah, that's a full switch.
I suppose teachers might say that they do a lot of policing.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's probably a lot of similar stuff. Can I bring you back a little bit then? Do you ever talk to people about looking at their current job and maybe could they change their mindset to realise that actually they have all the things that they're looking for where they are already? They just can't see them, or that their approach is wrong in that, well, if you didn't spend all weekend partying, then you mightn't hate your job on Monday morning. Can we get the work-life balance?
Yeah.
Do you talk to people about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's a great approach. The first thing to do is try to remove the problem, as opposed to just saying, oh, let's just change everything. So can we improve the current situation? Now, sometimes people will feel that they've done everything possible to do that already, but I suppose really honing in. I mean, the first step to solving almost any problem, of course, tell me if you disagree, but is figuring out exactly what it is.
What the problem is.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So, in other words, doing a root cause analysis.
Right.
So, I don't like my job. Okay, what don't you like about your job?
I don't like my boss.
Right, I don't like my boss,
Yeah.
right? So, well, do you not like the boss or do you not like the job? And then straight away you've made a distinction that, well, actually the boss is maybe, and that's legitimate. Maybe the boss
I
is,
love my boss, by the way. Sorry, I was just throwing that out there.
right?
Yeah.
No, big shout out to your boss,
Yeah.
right? And so,
But straight away,
you've got a distinction that, okay, the boss is challenging, or maybe the team is challenging, or something in the environment is
could
difficult.
be a colleague it could be one colleague that
Could be a transport route.
Could be a transport route.
Could be a transport route.
Yeah. I hate getting the
I
train.
hate getting the train every day for 2 hours. It's like, okay, so then you're listening very carefully to hear, well, what is the actual issue that the person's struggling with, and then how can we see what we can do to remove it. I remember like someone who came to me, well, probably 4 years ago now, but this is actually the nature of the conversation we had. Well, what do you like doing? And the crux of it was this person loves writing, right? Writing scripts, writing narratives, publishing, all types of writing, really, really open to anything that was just written. I wanted to do a little bit less work with clients and customers, right? I said, oh, okay, and have you spoken to your boss about this? And no, can I do that? Yeah, just, and they had a chat and they were like, there's a ton of writing over here that we would love someone to do.
Wow.
And then, and for this person, it was like magic.
Brilliant.
I've done almost nothing except have a 15-minute conversation. I've got this new job inside my current job. Everything else is the same.
So this is a person who was stressed, anxious, hated their job because they didn't like the public-facing, client-facing work. Were able to shift within their own and just like, just that it suited them to just be on their own, just typing away and doing the writing.
Right.
And that just solved all the problems.
Well, it solved a lot of the problems, right? I mean, I'm sure there's still one or two other things, but let's say even if you take 20%, like if you're in fast-paced customer service, that can be quite stressful for some people. And even if you take, and if you do that, like let's say 80% of your time, you take 20% or 30% or 50% off that and you do something else, it's going to reduce the stress massively and give them variety in their work and allow them to develop another skill that they feel they're already good at. And if you're doing a skill you're already good at, you're building up self-esteem. And when you're doing something you're good at, you might feel you're enjoying yourself a lot more because we tend to enjoy what we feel we're good at.
I wonder, did COVID and lockdown change work for people? Because suddenly, I mean, I'm just talking personally, but the commute was not something that I wanted. I did not like. I'm happy to live where I live, but most of the jobs are in Dublin, and I live in Kildare, and there was always a commute.
Yeah.
So taking that commute out of the equation, I was able to just work from home on my own, and and then like I don't mind dealing with people, and I don't mind having being in an office environment, and that's all fine. But some people just wasn't for them, So this idea that you can just, work, have your own office at home, do your work, no commute, it probably solved a lot of problems as well. And now you kind of feel like, well, I can say I don't actually want to go back to the office. I'm happy to work the way I am.
Yeah, I think it did solve a lot of problems with workplace stress. If you're in an environment that's toxic or your environment working with difficult people and now you're working at home, well, your life's immediately going to be a lot better. Other people, they get a lot of energy from being around people. They feed off them. You also get this opportunity to get informal mentorship or guidance or support just by being around people and having a coffee and saying, oh, have you tried this or have you done that? So all of those things were missed. So on one hand, yeah, if you're in a difficult situation, you're going to be a lot better off. But on the other hand, you might miss out on, fundamental need of connection, camaraderie, support.
Camaraderie is overrated.
Do you reckon? Yeah.
No, it's not at all.
Back to the home office, right?
Yeah.
Those types of things were very important during COVID. And I think people trying to transfer onto chat rooms online like Microsoft Teams and Zoom and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I think we've all realised now it's still not quite the same. It's good for communicating. I'm not sure how good it is for relationship building.
Okay.
So many people, when they negotiate or when they're trying to resolve interpersonal issues, it's all the body language and it's the informal coffee and the walk down the hallway and all that sort of stuff that just eases tensions. But now I think being on Zoom, if you have a challenge, you're just confronted with it in 2D, and I think that can be really a struggle.
Yeah. And the other thing someone said recently was like with Zoom calls, if you're in a meeting, you're used to looking at yourself.
Yeah.
And I know you can turn the camera off, but that's kind of rude then, isn't it? I've never,
is.
you're suddenly just looking at yourself and how you're reacting to other people, which is kind of weird.
Yeah,
as well.
it's a bit disconcerting for sure.
We're at the big finale already, Ronan, would you believe? So the podcast is called I'll Start Monday. What steps could our listeners take this Monday to get started on changing their career for the better?
I think first thing, sit down on a notebook and a pen and take an inventory of your transferable skills.
Okay.
Right? So whether they be administration, customer service, client relationship management, operations, strategy, business development, marketing, communications, all these type of skills are transferable skills. Another way to think about it is if I asked you to break your job down into 3 core component parts, right? What would you say? Or how would you describe it to a kid?
Right.
How do you describe it to your kids when you say, this is what I do? If you just give someone the job title, then they just picture you, oh, that's what you do. That's not what we do. So now we're different. But if you go a layer deeper and you talk about the transferable skills, now we've got the common ground.
Okay.
Right? So if you're talking to someone who works in a business and you work as a DJ, what's the common ground there? Right? But if I asked you now, what are your transferable skills? By the way, a lot of people find this super tough, like almost impossible to come up with, because, you can be an expert at what you do, and famous and very popular and all this, but you spend your time doing your job, not thinking about how you describe your job. So that's why it's so difficult. But if I was to put you on the spot, Keith, and say, well, what are your core transferable skills? What would you say? Would you have any thoughts?
I can use a computer.
Yeah.
I can use software programs.
Yeah.
I can write. I'm a writer.
So writing.
I can
right.
write.
What types of writing would you do?
I can write ads. I can write scripts for advertising, or I could write a script for a play. I've written a play, so I've anything from a play to an ad.
So even if you think of the ads, the script writing, the play, show notes, and what you're doing now, which is communications, right? Presentation skills. So all that can be kind of grouped together as communications.
Yeah.
Right. Basically, communicating a message to a mass audience. Right. What we're communicating, but communications is that mass kind of audience. So if you speak to anyone in a business and say, do you ever need someone to communicate messages to mass audiences? They'll say, yeah, sure, we have a communications function. And we've 3, 4, 5 people working there. So that's how you kind of get that middle ground on.
And you're in.
But if you say, I'm a DJ, and they say, oh, we're a law firm.
There's no common ground.
There's no common ground.
Wow.
But so, okay, do you have content on your website? Yeah. Do you send out emails to the group? Yeah. Do you ever think doing events where you need an MC is useful? Do you do any promotions? Have you done promotions?
Yes, I have, yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so you kind of tap into it that way. Does that give you a kind of idea?
Yeah, great. Cool, yeah. I'm handing in my notice Monday morning. I'm going to go work for a law firm, sending out emails. That's it. Anything else, Ronan, before I let you go? Any other top tips? Or is that it? Make the list. Make sure you know what your skills are, and look inside yourself.
One of the big things that people struggle with throughout their career is security, job security. And I think if I was to sum up job security in one word, it would be adaptability. Right, so if you're adaptable, you can go to different industries, you can take on different roles, you can use different skills. And one of the first steps in having that adaptability is understanding your transferable skills, but it's also knowing how to communicate that to the market. So if you can communicate it to the market, it means when a time comes up and you have to action those strategies, you're able to do it. So I think that's really, really important. That would be a key takeaway.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Ronan Kennedy, career coach and business mentor. Thanks for coming in and sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thanks so much.